Hi everyone, welcome to our short 15-20 minute video on Unit 3014, Coaching and Mentoring Processes. I'm going to hand over to Pearson and he's going to take us through the assignment. Thanks a lot, Pearson.
Great. So you're probably wondering, how on earth do I pass this assignment? I haven't done this before. What do I need to do? What do I not need to do? So the really simple thing is just answer the questions. At the CMI, I want you to answer the questions really specifically. So be really particular, pay attention to the command verbs, answer the question and only the question. So what we'll do is we'll step through. This on the screen here is the syllabus. You should have a copy of this, and it's broken up into three sections. We've got the learning outcome on the left. So all of the questions starting with the one, understanding the implementation of the coaching process. So how do we implement coaching? Then you've got the question itself, the assessment criteria. We call them ACs, the assessment criteria. That's what you're being assessed on. So we're discussing the different methods of coaching and training available to the coach. And then on the right-hand side, we've got a really useful little good practice box. And this says, well, here's good practice. Here's some of the tools and models you could do. Here's what you could talk about. You don't have to use all of it. I don't think you could use all of it. You don't have to use any of it, but it just gives you a guide as to right things to talk about. So let's start by dissecting the question. Look at the question. Always look for the command verb. In this case, the command verb is, yep, you're right, it's discuss. Now, you and I would say discuss in English. The CMI, I'm going to change screens. We'll have discuss, and they'll say, right, what we mean by that is give a detailed account, including a range of views or opinions, which include contrasting perspectives. So don't just give me one view, give me more than one view. See it from different angles. So we're discussing the different methods of coaching and training. We're looking for some different things there. So methods of coaching, methods of training available to the coach. What could you do? They're talking here about tools that might be useful. They might want to talk about Kolb and Honey and Mumford. That's the reflective practice cycle. So how do people learn? Do they reflect? Do they think about it? Do they practice? Do they get stuck in? What's the order they do that? So that might be useful in terms of, do I understand my learner and how they might want to be coached? VAK stands for visual, audio, kinesthetic. So visual, obvious, audio with your ears, kinesthetic, touchy-feely. Are people hands-on? They like to learn by doing and practicing. And then we've got a piece down here about outward Moravian. That's the content of the words, the tonality, and the communication through body language. So how much communication comes through each. So you might want to take these into account in terms of, well, how do I coach someone? Do I coach them online? Do I coach them video? What training methods are available? There might be some CPD where you follow the screens and tick the boxes and answer the questions. So you've got to look at what are the different opportunities for training and coaching, what goes on in your organization, what's available to you, and discuss different methods. It's fine for you to give some opinion. You need to make sure that you're referring to what I call academic rigor. So is there an existing tool or model? Is there some best practice? We say best practice, this stuff. Kolb, Honey and Mumford, VAC, Albert Moravian. So in 1.1, discussing the methods available to the coach. And then in 1.2, they're saying, identify the opportunity for coaching. Where might you do coaching? What might you do coaching about? That might be about someone's skills. It might be about their career. It might be about a new challenge they're having. It might be about an interpersonal challenge. Again, in the right-hand box here, it says, might be useful to look at Witherspoon's coaching continuum. So Witherspoon and White talks about coaching for skills. It talks about coaching for the role itself. Am I performing in the job? And then we've got coaching for talent. So that's could you coach for the next job? Could you get them ready to go to the next level up? And then the next level is, are we coaching for the executive's agenda? Are we helping them to prioritize their time effectively? So you could say these are all opportunities to coach people. As here, consider research conducted by professional bodies such as the CMI, Chartered Management Institute. You've got the link to Management Direct. That should be available to you. If not, you can ask Charlotte on cmi.impd.co.uk. The CIPD, that's the Chartered Institute of Professional Development. So you can look at things like that. You might want to use the professional body sites like the European Mentoring and Coaching Council or the Institute for Coaching, International Coaching Federation, sorry. So identify coaching opportunities. When would you coach people? What could you coach them about? When would those things happen? And then the third question in one is describe the coaching process. You're probably familiar with things like GROW. You can see the GROW model over here. Some people use Achieve. Other models are available. Dart's available. Stepper is available. Grow is really nice. Grow is an industry standard. Everyone understand the goal, reality, options, will do. And it's asking you to describe the whole coaching process, not just the Grow model. So what happens before? You might want to think about, is there some contracting that needs to be done? How do we contract to get into it? Are there expectations of what the coachee will do between session 1 and session 2? Are you expecting them to work on something? Is there some feedback? So just pay attention to what goes on the box over here. You could also highlight responsibility of the coach and the coachee in learning. So what are you doing? You're asking the questions, you're getting them to think, you're steering them to make them think certain things, you're trying to pull more detail out of them, but they should be doing more of the talking. You might talk about the balance of talking and listening and saying, well, maybe I'm talking 20 or 30% of the time, and they're talking 70 or 80% of the time. So talk about the whole process. What's it for? Why are we coaching? And coaching essentially is getting more out of the individual, helping them to take more responsibility, more accountability, and enabling them to do it themselves, which is different to mentoring, obviously. Now, questions 1, questions 2, they're a bit of a mirror. We then do the same thing. So understanding the implementation of the mentoring process. So discuss methods of mentoring available. Okay, so what's available? We probably covered a model, if you've done the training with us, something like the radar model where you're demonstrating. You might have formal coaching and informal mentoring. So informal mentoring is those conversations where you're giving some advice, giving some wisdom, helping to develop someone else. And that might be the equivalent of the water cooler chat, standing in the lunch queue, just as part of a meeting, you're just helping someone out. And then there's a much more formal process where we meet on a monthly basis. That might be more senior experience guiding someone. And this again will fit with things like, how do we help someone into the next job up? How do we mentor them through? So think about what a formal mentoring relationship looks like and informal mentoring relationship looks like. So discussing the methods, as we said, that's a detailed account. It's different opportunities. So what does it look like formal? What does it look like informal? And it will want some academic rigor. So who are the people that talk about mentoring? What are the mentoring models? Mention 1 or 2. You don't need to describe them. You don't really need to go into detail about how it works unless that's what the question is asking. It's just saying what's available, or these models are available. If you cite it and say, here's a radar model, or here's a clear model, the person who's marking it is meant to understand that. You should expect them to know it. So you don't have to explain it unless it's a explain the process question, which again, there'll be one of those coming up in 2.3. So moving to 2.2, we're identifying opportunities in the organizational environment for mentoring. So pause and think, where would we be using mentoring rather than coaching? So just think about that. Maybe we should link this to 1.2, consider the purpose of mentoring. So you could answer 1.2 and 2.2 together. You say these things need to be done. Sometimes they want to be done through coaching, sometimes they want to be done through mentoring. If you've got a new starter, you might say, well, the new starter needs some mentoring. Someone has to show them the ropes. Where do we go to lunch? How do we go to lunch? How do you get these reports in on time? What are the roles and goals of your role? What do you need to achieve? So that might be mentoring and show how, someone guiding. And there might also be some coaching for skills. Great, it's a new job. If you don't know how to do this thing, let's help coach you. How do you think you would go about doing this process? How did you do it in your last role? What did it look like where you've done it before? How could you bring some of that here? Where have you been successful in this? And could you use that here? So you might look at a similar process and say, all of these need to be done. Some parts belong to mentoring, some parts belong to coaching. You could answer it either way. You could answer all of the coaching questions in 1.2 and all the mentoring in 2.2, or you can put them together and say, in this box, I'm answering 1.1 coaching, 2.2 mentoring, and it's all together. That might save you some word count. It might be a bit more efficient on the use of words, but you must make sure you define which bits are relating to mentoring, which bits are relating to coaching. Okay. And then we move on to describing the mentoring process. So this is the bit where you all want to explain the model. This is the model and this is how it works. So it talks about Clutterbuck here. David Clutterbuck is well renowned for his work on coaching and mentoring. You can Google him and find out some things. You can look on Management Direct and see what it says in there. It talks about the clear process of mentoring. So that's a bit like GROW, but it's with it's an acronym with clear. Julie Hay explores a similar framework for mentoring, basing on process, procedural, and professional. So this is around the psychological contracting. What I'll do is I'll show you this here. There's a little item that's available. If you haven't got it, you can ask Charlotte for it. Setting up the coaching contract, and it talks here about what are the procedural parts of it, what are the professional parts of it, what are the psychological parts of it. So it's a nice little 2-pager, nice and short to read. Procedural down here, psychological, notes and sources. And then you can just use this as a reference. It's Julie Hay, and it was an IDT newsletter. All right, back to our syllabus. So that's questions 1 and 2. That's understanding and implementing coaching process and the mentoring process. You can answer them together. You can answer them separately. Completely up to you. Just be clear when you're writing into the template so the person who's marking it knows what you're up to. Things to pay attention to, as a recap, we talked about the command verb. We're discussing or identifying. That's just saying these are the things. Describing. What does that describe command verb look like? I haven't got to describe. Yes, I have. There we are. Provide an extended range of detailed factual information about the topic or item in a logical way. So extended range of detailed factual information, it wants a lot. If you're talking about the GROW process, when I'm in the goal, these are the questions I'd ask. When I'm in the reality section, these are the types of questions I'd ask. When I'm in the opportunity section, this is how it works. These are the questions I'd ask. When we get to the will do, this is how I'd handle that. These are the questions I'd ask. So extended range of detailed factual information in a logical way. If you use the GROW acronym to hang it on, then you've got a nice logical process. Here's where we start. Here's where we finish. Nice and straightforward. Let's cover identify while we're here. Ascertain the origin, nature, definitive characteristics of something. What is it? Yeah, really straightforward. Identify what the opportunities were for coaching and mentoring. Charlotte, you can flag up if I've missed anything, but I think we're ready to move on. Charlotte Smile says we're ready to move on. Okay. Understand the reviewing, progress, and provision for feedback. Interesting territory. So 3.1. Discuss the need for objective and constructive feedback in the coaching process. So again, we need to look at the discuss command verb. That's what we're doing. You might want to think about, well, what would I need to define here? What does objective and constructive feedback look like? Feel free to have a Google, use ChatGPT or the AI of your choice to say, what is that? How do we define objective and constructive feedback? And then use people like Management Direct to give you the models. There might be specific tools and models that you could use. There might be something that you covered in your training as here's a model we use for giving feedback. And why is it important? Why is it important to give objective and constructive feedback? It's part of the learning process. It's part of people looking in the mirror and seeing how they're doing and being able to grow from there. So you outline the principles. You might want to consider the balance between coaching, providing the feedback, as well as the learner's own reflection and self-assessment. So there may be something in, how do you think you're doing? How's it going for you? How's this working? How good do you think you are at skill X? And then you might give them some feedback and say, well, interestingly, what I see, what I observe when we're together is you do this. Does that match your expectations or not match your expectations? Just recapping there on discuss. So we are detailed account, range of views and opinions. So not just one thing, not just feedback is X, but feedback could be X or Y or Z. So you're getting your contrasting perspectives. If you just did one thing, they'd say, no, you've explained, you haven't discussed. I need more detail. I need different contrasting perspectives. So discuss is asking you to look at it broadly. This on the right-hand side, the best practice will give you some good ideas to look at. In 3.2, we're discussing the need for exploratory feedback in the mentoring process. 3.1, coaching. 3.2, mentoring. So consideration given to feedback, the role of the mentor and the mentee. So what's your role when you're mentoring? What's the role of the mentee? So exploratory feedback, how do you help them to assess themselves? How do you assess what's going on? So take a little bit of time. It's important to make sure that you understand how the feedback required in coaching may be different to the feedback required in mentoring, and how do you separate them? How do you define them, pull them apart? Use Google to look stuff up, look in Management Direct, read around the subject, go back to training, look at the feedback models. And as long as you can justify it, as long as you're answering the question, but only the question, then that's what's needed. Try not to go off on a tangent and talk about once upon a time I had feedback, it was like this and it was horrible, or once upon a time I had feedback like this, it was great. You're just giving what are the different sorts of feedback available, and then how does exploratory feedback work? From the right-hand side here, it's saying the following two criteria may be answered together. So I'm saying again, you need to distinguish against coaching and mentoring, but these are mirror questions. Discuss the need for confidentiality and ethics in coaching. Discuss the need for confidentiality and ethics in mentoring. So if you've been coached already, if you are coaching already, you're probably well up on the idea that confidentiality is really important. If you want some academic rigor, some specialist knowledge on the subject, here we're saying the European Coaching and Mentoring Council provide guidance. You can go online, you can look it up, you can download it, and they'll say, here's all our information on coaching and mentoring and the need for ethics. How do we have confidentiality? How do we have ethics? Now, these two are different, but our confidentiality in coaching is probably all about us keeping the counsel of our coachee. Sure, the ethical part of that is balancing that against things like safeguarding. Are they putting themselves at risk? Are they putting their company at risk? Are they putting their charges at risk? So, we're balancing ethically how that confidentiality is working. Is there something that trumps confidentiality at any point? Need for confidentiality and mentoring may be different. If we're being mentored by someone very senior, they might be talking about things that would normally be confidential to us and we wouldn't normally be allowed to know them. So perhaps the burden of confidentiality works differently, that it's the mentee that needs to hold the confidentiality in this case. So a little bit of thought, a little bit of reflection on those. If you want to answer them together, you can do that. If you want to answer them separately, separate them out. Do make sure that you're using some sort of academic rigor. That might be the CIPD. You might have a body that you're attached to with your work, or you could use any of the coaching federations. So the International Coaching Federation, Association of Coaching, the CMI often talk about the EMCC because that's the European Mentoring and Coaching Council. So it's covering the mentoring as well as the coaching. Takes us smoothly on to 3.5. Identify the achievement and progress and recognise success. So how do we recognise success in a coaching or mentoring situation? With coaching and mentoring, they tend to be goal directed. We're here to achieve X. We're moving from point A to point B. There's a goal. With the coaching, the coachee usually chooses that goal. With mentoring, that goal may be chosen by the mentor, may be chosen by the mentee. But what they're looking for is that, again, that academic rigor, what makes it true, the SMART, really nice, accepted process. Lots of people know about SMART. You can look it up on the internet. You can look it up on Management Direct and say, well, how do we use this to set recognition? Have we set the goal well? Can we measure it well? Can we see if it's been done or not done? Is it done in a measurable way? Was it achievable? Was it within the gift of the individual? Was it relevant? And was it time bound? So we can use this to review the goal on which parts the coachee or mentee is succeeding on or not succeeding on. What else do we have down here? Identify the deliverables, what the outcome's going to be. Review and identify progress that you recognize. You could develop an action plan template. So you could have an action plan template. If you put in something like an action plan template, that can go in as a figure or a picture. and it doesn't count in your word count. If you want to use a diagram and say, here's the grow model or the Kolb cycle, any of those things we talked about, or here's Witherspoon and White, you can cut and paste the slide or cut and paste an article and say, here's a figure outside of the word count. And that would appear to be the entirety of what you need to do. So in recap, always make sure you're looking at the command verb. Answer the question really specifically. If it's talking about, in the organizational environment, only talk about the organizational environment. Don't talk about life coaching or something outside or sports coaching, only in the organizational environment. So be really specific. When it says discuss methods of mentoring, what are the methods? That's what we're talking about. When it says mentoring opportunities, it's the opportunities we're talking about in the organizational environment. Read the question really specifically. If you want to go back and look at what you've written and say, does it answer exactly what the assessment criteria was asking? And if it does, you're in. Send it in. If it's 80% good, if you think most of this is good, send it in, and the CMI will mark it and do the hard work, and they'll give you feedback, and the feedback will be clear and direct. They want you to pass. They are not looking for opportunities for you to fail. They're looking for you to pass, and they'll say, here's the thing that was in the gap between you passing. That's the thing you need to address, and you get a free second go. There you go. Make sure you get yourself the syllabus, pay attention to the best practice, use the websites available to you, the Management Direct CMI portal, use things like the EMCC website or the CRPD website, answer the question exactly as it is, and when you think you're pretty close, send it in and get it marked.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Pearson. As Pearson said, if anyone has any questions, you can contact me anytime on cmi@inpd.co.uk. And we look forward to receiving your assignment soon. Thanks very much.
Good luck.